Good morning, BookTube. This is Johnny. It is here in West Michigan. It is a Wednesday morning. It is 7:51 in the morning here in West Michigan. It's a Wednesday. It is the last day of February 2018. It is February the 18th. Sitting in our dining room, writing in my diary. I'm on page 156 this morning. I got out to read a book I got in the mail yesterday. I mentioned I had pre-ordered N.T. Wright's biography on the Apostle Paul. It came in the mail yesterday. This is N.T. Wright, who is an Anglican New Testament scholar. He's very famous in the New Testament scholarly world. This is his biography. It just came out. I have several other books by N.T. Wright down the lower level. The last book I read of his was The Day the Revolution Began, about the death of Christ. He's written a lot of books, and but I don't buy all of them because I'm not. Some people, they just read everything that N.T. Wright puts out, which would be he's written a commentary on every book in the New Testament, and I just don't do that. Anyway, I started reading it last night. Got it out to read this morning. Also, I read yesterday morning God's Glory and Salvation Through Judgment, Biblical Theology by James M. Hamilton Jr. So that's what I've been reading this morning. What I want to do in this video is, there is a tag been going around in the BookTube world. I don't do tags because most of the tags deal with people who have read a lot of fiction, a lot of science fiction, fantasy, and fiction, and I have not done that. So most of the questions in those tags I could never answer, because most of my reading has been in systematic theology, New Testament commentaries, Old Testament commentaries, Old Testament theology, New Testament theology, 17th century Puritan literature, church history, things like that. But I have read fiction over the years, and I've read a lot of other kinds of books like letters and biographies and memoirs and literary criticism, but books on the Civil War, books on the First World War, things like that. But I've not done a lot of fiction, so I can't answer most of the tags. But one of the tag questions is, can you remember, it's just one question, can you remember the first book that you read? And somebody asked that of me too as a comment in one of my videos. And as I was thinking about that question, now obviously when I was growing up as a child, nobody read any, my mother did not read to me or read to us. I don't remember my mother ever reading a book, even though, as I've mentioned in past videos, there were novels around the apartment or duplexes that we lived in as I was growing up. As I've mentioned, my mother was killed in an auto wreck. Well, an ambulance killed my mother in December of 1968 when I was 16 years old. So I don't remember what I read from 16 until I was a small child. But I do remember reading like The Valley of the Dolls and The Carpetbaggers and stuff that was laying around the apartment that my mother must have picked up somewhere. My mother was not a reader. And I've mentioned that I was always fascinated with books as a child, but I never really got into literature really like until I was like in the 12th grade. But I do remember something. I'm getting to this. When I was around 9 years old, my mother was divorced. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. And I don't remember much about my siblings around me when I was 9 years old, but when I was 9 years old, my mother was divorced and she was working as a cocktail waitress in Norfolk, Virginia. And for some unknown, well, the reason my memory tells me is that my mother went through a very difficult time and she could not take care of us. It's a very long, complex story, but I won't go all into detail. So my mother had us live with my uncle and aunt in Charleston, Oregon, which was a little town on the coast of Oregon, a little town that was like where people made their living fishing, salmon fishing. So I remember what memories I had. We went to live with my uncle and aunt in Charles, Oregon. And I was 9 years old. And I won't go into all the gory details of what a horrible experience that was. But it answers the question, the first book I read. Well, we lived in this old house, and I think that there are people who lived upstairs, and there was a staircase in the backyard that went up to the apartment, I think on the second floor. And there was a dirt road across. There's a dirt road in front of this old house that we lived in with my uncle and my aunt and my 3 cousins. And there was Mike, my brother, and myself. And across the street from this old house, across the street from this dirt road, was a church. And there was the church, the minister's house was across the street too. In this little coastal town. And I remember as a boy, I would go to church. I don't know, my aunt and uncle didn't stop me. And I said, I'm going to go. One day as a boy, 9 years old, I said to my uncle and aunt, who were alcoholics, very poor, very, very cruel people, very hard. And I said, I'm going to go to church this is a Sunday. And so I needed a Bible. That's the question. That's the thing, the Bible. And my uncle, who was a very mean, hard alcoholic, he loaned me his Bible. I don't know where he got this Bible, but it was a Bible and that had dogwood covers. It had wood covers. And he gave it to me and said I could use this. So I went to church. And I would go to church, I would go to Sunday school, and I would go to Sunday school. I would go to, during the week, there were like Bible studies the minister's wife had like a Bible study or a thing for us to get together. Now, I don't remember much about those days. I was very traumatized because here I was, 9 years old, separate from my mother. I didn't know if I was ever going to see her again. She didn't write that many letters. She didn't make telephone calls. And I was just really was a very difficult time because my uncle and aunt were really very mean, cruel, even though they did probably in their own way take us in. But I would go to church. So I would say the Bible was the first book I remember reading. Now going into the future, many years later, when I was 17 years old, during the summer, by that time I was living in a foster family. It's a long story. And during the summer, I would go hitchhiking up and down the coast, California, Oregon, and I would live on the beach, hang out with hippies, and that kind of thing. And one time I stopped in that small town of Charles, and the minister's wife was still there, this church was still there, and I knocked on the door of the minister's house, and she came to the door. I told her how when I was a boy, how I would come to their church and her Bible studies, and so we talked for a while. So yeah, I don't know what we talked about, but we went to the church and we walked around inside the church building, and I told her the Sunday school classes and what I remembered, and it was an old church, and I think it was Baptist. I'm not really sure anymore. So then when I was in my 20s, speeding up the story here, I had a girlfriend who was she was older than me, and she had a daughter who was like, I don't know, around my age, 18, 19. She had a boyfriend. And the boyfriend mother was was a Christian, and one time she offered to her son, who was going with my girlfriend's daughter, that she would pay for a trip for both of them to go to Israel. So I said that when you go to Israel, could you get me a Bible with the dogwood covers on it? That's what it was. It was dogwood. Because I remember as a boy, my uncle let me borrow that Bible of the dogwood covers, and I always wanted another Bible like that. And I was a Christian like I said, I became a Christian when I was 18 years old, and this is like when I was in my early 20s. And he said sure, that he would, while he was in Jerusalem with his mother in Israel, that he would try to find me a Bible with dogwood covers. And so he came back, and this is what he gave me. It's not a whole Bible, it's just the New Testament. It has in the back of it, Jerusalem. Excuse me. So yeah, I would say this is the first book I remember reading, is the Bible, when I was 9 years old. Reading that Bible with the dogwood covers. Yeah, I mentioned that my grandfather gave me 2 Bibles, one from 1963 and one from 1968, but I don't remember if I had those Bibles when I was living with my uncle and my aunt. Like I said, I didn't have a Bible, so I don't know where those Bibles were. Maybe my mother had possession of them while I was living with my uncle and aunt. Well, to make a long story, I lived with my uncle and aunt for almost over a year, and they moved down to the Bay Area. They lived in San Pablo, and when they were living in San Pablo, my mother got remarried back in Norfolk, Virginia, and I had just turned 10 years old. And I remember going to summer school, and we flew back, my brother and I, back to Norfolk. and she had remarried for the second or third time, and we were living out in the country. So that's what I remember. But the first book I read was a Bible with dogwood covers when I was 9 years old, and going to church and going to Sunday school and going to a boy and girls Bible club. Now, I don't remember if I went to church all the time. I don't remember much in those days. Like I said, I was traumatized. I remember just feeling absolutely alone because my uncle and aunt were just cruel, hard people. Those were very difficult days. I don't think I ever got over that trauma. Maybe that's why I'm so the way I am today. But here I am. You would think that, being 66 years old, that those whatever happened when I was 9 years old would have gone away. But what you experience as a child, you never get over with. You just kind of damage goods the rest of your life. But like I've always say, I'm a Christian, and the Lord has kept me going all these years. Still read the Bible. Now I don't look at this Bible. I got it down from the lower level because I have Bibles here on the table here. Like, I've shown these. I've always got Bibles everywhere. I must have got up here in the lower, there's probably at least 10 Bibles here. I've always kind of loved the Bible, I suppose, even when I was not a Christian. Sometimes I wonder if I was a Christian as a boy, but it never maybe you have you're it's not that God's grace is working in your life, and then there comes a point where it's like I say, I became a Christian. I never had a dramatic conversion experience, one day you're in darkness, one day you're in the light, that you have this radical kind of conversion experience, the Damascus Road. I didn't really have that. It was more like when I was 18 years old, I set my face where the Lord worked in me a desire to follow Him and to live for Him. Now, I would admit that the first maybe first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my Christian life were very hard. I was young. I did a lot of dumb things. But now I'm sitting here in Holland, Michigan, 2018. My wife left early this morning for Grand Rapids Airport, and she's flying out to Denver, Colorado, and I'm by myself here in Holland, Michigan, talking into this camera about when I was a boy and reading a Bible with the dogwood covers and reading the life of the Apostle Paul, writing in my diary, and I have the whole day before me. So I'll probably make a lot of videos since I'm here and I can talk into this camera. So I'll sign off, I'll download this video, and I've been reading books in the afternoons. I might go to thrift stores this morning. I might just do nothing. Anyway, it's like Amazing Grace. Just like, talk about Amazing Grace, I'll sign off with this. It just came to me, these verses in the Epistle of Ephesians. It says in Ephesians chapter 2, "And you He made alive, who are dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling desires of the flesh and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as others. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised us up together, and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness towards us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith, that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And he who made you alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, he made me alive. And now, by God's resurrection power, I live out the Christian life. So I'll sign off with that. Thank you for the new subscribers. Thank you for the comments. Hope you have a good day. And until next time, bye.